Welcome to our Coffee Bean to COP Experience India presentation. I am Jose Sagarnaga, Director of the KGOL, our Center for Advanced Global Leadership and Engagement in the Spear School of Business at Oklahoma State University. The KGOL is the hub of all global activities at Spears Business, and it was established in 2014 thanks to the support of Roger and Cindy Cagle. We at the KGOL believe that every student can be a global leader. We engage with our students, faculty, global alumni and academic partners, and government officials to enable global competence opportunities for all of our stakeholders. We at Spirit Business are signatory members of the UN Global Compact Principles of Responsible Management Education, and we highlight the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. This presentation is co-organized with the support of the Always Unite Impact chapter, which is our sustainability student organization. Always Use, School of Global Studies and Partnerships, and Immersion India. Immersion India is an organization that curates experiential learning programs in urban and rural India. Since June 2017, Immersion India has enabled academicians, students, and corporate executives to experience India in its true sense. This year, Immersion India was chosen as one of 25 winners of the UN World Tourism Organization SDGs Startup Competition. Congratulations. Before our introductions, I have a reminder to those joining us live. Please submit your question via text to the number that will appear on the bottom of your screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce my friend, Anand Joseph, founder and partner of Immersion India, who will be presenting our guest speaker, Mr. Sachin Mahesh.
Namaste. For those of you who don't know what this is, for the benefit of our audience, Namaste is a customary form of respectfully greeting the opposite person or group. It is used any time of the day. So the next time when you're walking around campus, I do know you have a lot of Indian students on your campus, just do the Namaste with your hands folded like this. I'm sure the opposite person will be taken aback. More so, if it's a guy trying to impress a girl, you can be rest assured of a coffee date soon. Thank you, Jose, for the introduction. We are glad to be part of the Sustainable Developmental Goal initiatives of the Oklahoma State University and the Center for Advanced Global Leadership and Engagement. I am Anand Joseph, the co-founder of Immersion India. Like what Jose just mentioned, we are India's foremost experiential learning service providers, offering a niche service to the global learning community to experience India in its true sense. I'm happy to announce, like Jose just mentioned, that Immersion India is the only startup globally as well as within the country to have won the United Nations World Tourism Organization SDG startup competition in the field of providing quality education. We would have ideally wanted to be doing this session with you in person, but the time is not far when we can all travel freely and hopefully see you all in India soon. But for now, let me teleport you all the way from Stillwater, Oklahoma to Sakleshpur. Sakleshpur, which is also known as the land of coffee. Sakleshpur is a city and Karnataka is a state in India. Karnataka is the state which also houses the very famous Silicon Valley of this country, Bangalore. For today's session, our focus is we're talking about one of the world's most traded commodity, which is coffee. I have with me my good friend and colleague, Sachin. Sachin is a fourth generation coffee planter who, along with his family, has been involved in growing coffee for the last 100 years, and some of the best coffee, mind you, in this part of the world. Without any delay, I would let Sachin take you through the entire process of coffee, right from the bean to the cup. Also, get ready to learn how to make the very famous traditional South Indian coffee, which you will surely not miss when you visit India on your next tour. Sachin, over to you.
Namaste, everybody. Hi, guys. I'm Sachin Mahesh. Thanks, Anand, for the introduction. Good evening to everybody at Oklahoma State University. Like Anand introduced me earlier, I'm a fourth generation coffee planter. I have a bachelor's degree in business from Bangalore University and a master's degree in business from the University of Michigan. I was in Michigan to do my master's between 2006 and 2008, and I worked in the United States until 2013 in the financial management field for a startup company. I chose to come back to my coffee estate in 2013 since my dad is in a retiring age, and I wanted to take Hosatota Estate, which is the name of my plantation, to its next level. We want to get into retailing and modernize many of the facilities, and we started doing that in 2013. Our coffee business is managed mostly by my father, who is retired now, and myself. Ours is a 180-acre coffee plantation. It is intercropped with many of the Indian spices, such as black pepper, arecanut, and cardamom. We have about 75 to 80 workers employed in this plantation throughout the year. And during the harvest season, we go up to employing about 150 workers. Anand, let's take them through our coffee estate. We'll show them around our house and part of our coffee plantation. Our coffee estate comes right on the national highway between Bangalore and Mangalore. As you folks in the United States call it, it's the freeway connecting Bangalore and Mangalore, the two major cities in Karnataka. And let's go to the video. All right, so as you saw in the video, we have our infrastructure for processing around my house that you're seeing on that still screen. And then the rest of it is our coffee estate. It's hard to see the coffee plants when you're taking an aerial shot because that's the unique thing about our Indian coffee. It's grown amongst the flora and fauna of our existing ecosystem. So you can only see the trees, and the coffee plants reside right underneath the trees. You can see the palm trees, the silver oaks, and many of the jungle variety of trees. So our coffee plants reside right underneath them. And then you probably noticed a few tanks. There are a few man-made tanks that was created by us for a few generations now. Those tanks basically are storage tanks. We receive majority of our rainfall during the months of June, July, and August, which are the monsoon months in South India. So we collect the water during these months and use them for irrigating our coffee plantation through the months post that, during the summer months, predominantly February, March, and April, all the way until June. So these we've been investing. So 10% of our income every year for over last 20 years, we've been investing back into making irrigation facilities and tanks and pipelines and so on. So we can sustain this for the next few generations. Okay, on to the next slide. We have some interesting facts about coffee here. India is one of the few countries in the world. You can see that the coffee growing countries are mostly tropical countries. India is one of the few countries where coffee is grown under shade. Predominantly what happens in Brazil or Vietnam or South American countries is they level the coffee growing field, they bring down they clear the forest basically, and then start putting in coffee plants from there, and there is no shade. So they do this in order to mechanize everything. And with the existing trees, the mechanization becomes difficult. Whereas here in India, everything is grown in under shade. So we have our jungle trees, we have our existing piece of jungle as it is, and our coffee plants are planted amongst them. So let's go back, Anand. I have a little bit more to talk about. Yep. So the coffee grown in India is predominantly exported, and about 29 to 30% of it majorly going to Italy. And Europe is the major importer of coffee from India. Like Anand also mentioned earlier, coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world, right after oil. Indian coffee grown regions are among the 25 biodiversity hotspots of the world. Let's move on. So a little bit about the history of coffee in India. Coffee in India has a very interesting history. Would you believe it if I told you that the first set of coffee beans came to India hidden in the beard of a saint? For the longest time, coffee plant was so prized that the people were not allowed to carry its seeds out of the Arabian Peninsula. The only beans that were allowed to be taken out were roasted, hence sterile. They couldn't be used to grow the coffee plant once the beans were roasted. So they would only let people take out the roasted coffee beans out of the Arabian Peninsula. This was to ensure that the Middle East retained its monopoly over the coffee production. It took a wandering Sufi saint to change all this in the 16th century. Baba Budan was from Chikmagalur, which is which is about an hour away from where I live here in Sakleshpur, part of the same state of Karnataka. He lived in a cave, Mr. Baba Budan. He was revered by Hindus and Muslims alike, and while on his journey to Mecca, which is their holy pilgrimage, for the Hajj, he's said to have brought back 7 raw coffee beans, smuggled and hidden in his beard from Mocha in Yemen. This is how coffee came into India. Back home, he came back to Chikmagalur on the slopes of Chandragiri Hills, near the caves where he lived. He planted these 7 beans grew the coffee plants. Today, Chikmagalur is predominantly covered with coffee estates and all its hills, and the beauty of Chikmagalur is it's coffee that is grown there. The hills where he planted these coffee is today known as Baba Budangiri, which is the home of Indian coffee. The Dutch, who occupied much of India throughout the 17th century, had spread the cultivation of coffee across the country, but it was the arrival of the British Raj in the mid-19th century that commercial coffee fully flourished in India. Thanks to the success of British entrepreneur in conquering the hostile forest terrain in South India, Indian coffee industry has made rapid strides and earned a distinct identity in the coffee map of the world. So as you can see, Anand, let's show them the map of India and just help them understand where exactly we live. So as you can see, the southern India, the dark portion, Karnataka, we grow about 203,000 metric tons of coffee. These are the 3 southern Indian states where coffee is grown. Majority of it coming from Karnataka, and even in Karnataka, there are only 3 districts that grow coffee. One is Chikmagalur, one is Hassan, and another one is Coorg. And Sakleshpur, where my plantation resides, it's part of Hassan district. And outside of Karnataka, there is Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which contribute, put together about 30%, and Karnataka amounts to about 70% of the production in India. Let's move to the next slide. Coffee in India is unique because it's predominantly grown, like I was saying, in the wild surroundings. We keep the environment as natural as possible with the required shade given by the tall trees to the plants. The 2 main varieties of coffee grown in India is Arabica and Robusta. In the reading material we have shared, you will have some facts about coffee industry and India's coffee market share. Let me show you a typical coffee growing surrounding in my estate. All right. So I think you would have noticed that there are 2 different shade patterns that you would have noticed in the video. The first part was very shaded. Shaded meaning there were a lot of trees. Arabica variety of coffee requires a lot of shade. It's a smaller plant and requires more shade. Let's scroll back to that, Anand. Yeah. Yep. You can notice here. Let's pause it there. You can notice that. Okay, there you go. So there are quite a few trees. Yep, let's pause it right there. Okay, so this is a typical Arabica plantation. You'll see that there is a lot of shade, plenty of trees, and then you have your plants, coffee plants underneath them. Arabica is a smaller variety. It's a dwarf variety, and in Arabica there are varieties known as Chandragiri, Katimor, Sachimore, and so on. So we predominantly have Chandragiri variety of Arabica coffee here. And let's move on. Let's move forward in the video. Yeah, there you go. Let's pause it here. So this is a Robusta variety. You can see that the plants are much larger. There are also less trees here. Robusta, as the name suggests, is a robust plant. Left alone, it'll grow like a tree. It's a big plant, loves sun. So more sun, more water, a better crop. That's typically what happens with a Robusta plant. So it's quite distinct. You see a Robusta plant and an Arabica plant, it's easy to distinguish between the two. Arabica is a more premium variety, which is mostly used for, the single origin coffees, the Americanos, and predominantly what is exported out of India for premium coffee is Arabicas. Robusta coffee is majorly used in the instant coffee world. So you have your powdered instant coffee in the packaged shelves. So that's your Robusta plants, Robusta coffee. Let's move forward through the video. I'll talk a little bit about the coffee life cycle here. So this coffee flower emerges. So the coffee life cycle starts in the month of February. This is when we start irrigating our coffee plants. It requires a certain amount of rainfall, and once the plant receives the rain, in about 9 days from receiving the rain, or we artificially irrigate, since there's no rain in the month of February here in South India, we irrigate our plants using sprinklers or using drip irrigation. We artificially stimulate the flowering. So from the day of receiving the water, on the 9th day, you see the coffee flowers emerge. And then in the month of February is typically when we start this. Let's move on and let's move through the video. So this is the coffee bean. It's not ripe there. You can see some on the right, which is ripe, and some on the other part of the plant, which is not ripe yet. Those are yet to be harvested. This size of the beans will come sometime in the month of October, November, and so on. So let's move on to the next part of the video. There you go. So let's pause that. That is a ripe coffee bean. This is ready to be harvested. Unripe ones. So we wait till these green beans turn into red, till the berry is completely filled and the fruits are ready to be harvested. And the harvesting, let's move on and let's see. Yeah. So the coffee life cycle starts in the month of February once we irrigate our coffee plants, and the bean filling and the berry formation happens through the monsoon. And October, November is when the berry is filled and the fruits start turning red, and we start harvesting in the month of December. We only harvest the beans that are ready, which is the ripe beans. We'll talk more about that. We'll see some harvesting in this next video, and then I'll talk more about that. So what you saw there is our workers during the harvest season harvesting the coffee beans, or the coffee fruit itself. So what is really different in our Indian coffee compared to the other parts of the world? If you go to Brazil, you will not see workers or laborers doing this. Machines take care of this, which pretty much means there is no selective harvesting. The mechanical harvesters, what they do is they get hold of the stem of the plant, they shake them, so all the coffee on the plant is harvested at one shot. So there is no separating the ripe from the unripe, and um, it just strips the plant from all of its harvest, and then they move on. In India, we only do selective harvesting, which means the ripe ones are harvested for 3 months. Starting from December, we do our first round of selective picking. We may harvest about 25 to 30% in the month of December. We wait for it to mature some more, the unripe beans. Once they mature, we come back to the second round in the month of January, and in the end of February, we complete our harvesting. So this happens in several rounds, and it's all done manually. We also ensure that we don't lose our foliage during the harvest. So laborers ensure that the plants are handled in the right manner to cause minimal damage to the plants. These are perennial crops, so we can't afford to damage the plants during the harvest. Um, there are a few more things that I would like to add there. I think in the last couple of videos, what you also saw was that there is flour, there is unripe beans, and there are ripe beans all in the same plant. This is thanks to the climate change that's happening all over the world. We are no different from anywhere else. We are seeing the impacts of it right here. So the dry months in southern India is between end of November to February. We don't receive rainfall. So like I mentioned, we instigate the flowering in the month of February. And typically what happens is we get 2 rounds of flowers. The first round in the mid-Feb, and the second round of flowering happens in the first week of March. So what's happening lately is, take this year, for example, we have rainfall record in our coffee plantation for over 100 years. Maybe twice or thrice we have received rainfall in the all 3 months of December, January, and February. And that happened this year. So what happens when in this kind of a scenario is, we were not done harvesting, so we still had ripe beans in the plant, and we had a full-blown rainfall, which means the flowering started right in the month of December. And then the plants are not ready yet for the flowering, so the buds are not ready. And then again in the month of January, we received another rainfall. Then you get another set of flowers. So there is continuous, what we call as phase flowering, or multiple blossoms, which definitely impacts the rainfall. And however much care the laborers or the workers take to harvest the crop, there will be certain amount of damage done to the flowers during the harvest. So you also lose a certain amount of crop. And also, as you go through the months, when there is different sizes of coffee beans in the plant, there is some amount that gets pushed out of the plant due to rejection, due to lack of space in the bunch, and so on and so forth. So this is because next to is sort the beans. Let's have a look at the video, and then I'll talk more about it. All right. So once the coffee is harvested, there will be an accidental harvest of unripe beans. So we sort that out. Um, we predominantly use washed coffee, or what we sell is washed coffee. What that means is only the ripe beans are pulped, where the coffee skin is separated from the beans. So before we start our mechanical process of taking out the husk from the beans, the sorting of the beans happen, which means they take out the unripe beans, and they only this is what is known as the coffee vat, and the ripe beans are only put on this vat. The unripe beans are taken out separately and they're processed differently. Let's move on to the next slide. Coffee bean vat, like I was saying, that's what you're seeing there. That's our coffee bean vat right next to our workers sorting the beans. Once sorted, they will dump the coffee beans onto this vat. We have 3 different plantations. The sorting happens in all 3 blocks separately, and we transport our coffee beans through our trucks, and the trucks come and unload the coffee, harvested coffee, right into the vat once it's sorted. All right. So what you're seeing here is once the coffee is in the vat, they're conveyed through water onto the siphon. What you're seeing on the right part of the screen is a siphon, which means if they're overripe beans, which are light, they float on top. So the processing is only done for the beans that are harvested at the right time. The overripe beans are taken out, which float on the siphon here, and then the rest of the beans move on to the processing unit. The next phase in our processing is the bean pulping, where the coffee husk is taken out from the beans. What you're seeing here is the coffee pulping process. Anand, can we pause it right here? Yep. Okay. So this is what is known as a pulper. This bucket, as we call it, gets hold of the coffee beans, takes out the skin, and the skin is separated from the beans. And what you saw in the initial part of the video is the coffee beans coming out of the pulper, and the husk is moved on to our composting unit. So Predominantly, what is used in the European world in their cafes is our washed coffee, which is basically pulped coffee. The skins are separated, only the beans with its parchment husk is dried, and then that goes on to being the washed coffee. And the rest of it, which whether it's dried or during our accidental harvest, what we get unripe beans is dried as is, which means we dry it with the skin, and that is the cherry coffee is what we call it. So right here, so once the skin is taken out, the coffee beans come onto our washer, and the washing unit takes out the mucilage. So the coffee bean itself is quite slimy. Once the skin is taken out, it's a slimy surface on top. So that needs to be taken out. So what we do is fermentation. We let the coffee beans soak in a pit for about 48 hours, sometimes longer, depending on how washed our customers want it. And once the fermentation happens and the mucilage is taken out, then we wash the coffee again. It's a double washed fermented coffee. And once, let's go back to the initial part of the video, and the right at the beginning where you saw the beans coming out to the a little bit further. Right there. So what you're seeing at the back of that is a washer, vertical washer. The coffee, the day we harvest a coffee, we harvest about 12,000 kgs of coffee every single day during the harvest season. And then once the coffee is taken and dumped into the vat, the pulping happens, and then we wash the coffee. After 48 hours, the washer takes out the coffee through this. These are taken out through the wheelbarrow and put onto a drying yard the same day the coffee is harvested. So by the end of, usually this processing happens in the evenings. By midnight, we ensure that the harvested coffee is taken out to our drying yards. And the next morning, when the sun is shining, we want our coffee to start drying the very next day. So this is the bean processing part, and then let's move on to the bean drying. So what you're seeing here is the coffee, washed coffee, what we call as coffee parchment, being dried onto the drying yards. So in the initial video also, you saw our processing units. We use something called as barbecue tiles to dry our coffee. And typically we need about 3.5 days for the coffee parchment to be dried. We get peak sunlight between 10 to 3, so every day the coffee is raked together, and then what a worker there he's doing is spreading them in a thin layer. So we want to ensure that there's about 12% moisture in our coffee parchment when we are done through the drying process. And for the other part, which is our coffee cherries, which is dried without washing, without pulping, we maintain about 13% moisture, and that's done at the same process. Every day the coffee is piled up to ensure that every single bean is dried to the same capacity, and then we spread it thinly. And after 3.5 days, the coffee parchment is taken out of the drying yard. So the next portion of the processing is the bean roasting. Until the roasting happens, we call them green beans, which is raw coffee beans. What you saw in the previous video, the washed coffee has a yellow, the coffee parchment has a yellow husk, which is taken out through what we call as a hulling process. So the yellow husky portion is taken out, then the coffee is polished, and then we go through a grading process. So there are several different grades of coffee. There's AAA, AA, AA, and then there's B, double B, and so on. So what we do in our plantation is we take the best of the coffee grades. We get about 15 to 20% of the AAAs and AAs, which goes on to our retailing shelves, which is graded separately, sorted separately, and then we roast them. So what you need to understand is, until the roasting happens, the coffee is in a green state, and you can store them as long as it doesn't absorb moisture. You can store them for a few months, years, in fact, without degrading the quality of coffee in any way. But once the roasting happens, the shelf life starts ticking. So the next process here is the bean roasting. Let's go through this, and then I'll talk more about it. So what you're seeing there, that's the roasted coffee beans. The ones that was loaded into the roaster initially was green in color, and once it comes out here, you must have seen this many times. They have loaded coffee, roasted coffee, and Starbucks and so on, cafes around the world. So once this is done, the coffee doesn't germinate anymore, and the best way, according to me, to buy coffee is in this state for a consumer, and then grind it only when you're ready. So once the coffee is powdered, the consumption needs to happen, according to me, in not more than a week. So the roasting, like many people say, is an art as much as it's a science. So you do it to your liking, to your customers' wants and needs. There's light roast, there's dark roast, there's Vienna roast. It's not just the amount of roasting, it's the amount of heat you need to provide to the roaster. It's the duration, it's the kind of roaster that you're using. All of that matter. And we do different kinds of roasting depending on what our customers want and what they ask for. Okay, so we, like I was mentioning, in our Indian coffee estates, our coffee is grown amongst many other spices. Our coffee plantation, Hosatota Estate, is a recipient of an international award for the highest per capita growth of pepper in a given piece of land. So we have a lot of pepper vines. Pepper is a creeper. It climbs on any kind of tree which is rough enough for it to cling onto. So we'll show you some of the pepper plants, and then we can talk more about it. So we have our silver oak trees, fig trees. There are many fruits that we grow, like um, orange in our plantations, and we use the same trees as a standard for our pepper plants. Um, Pepper harvest is right after coffee, and the life cycle of the pepper plant matches very well with the robustas and arabicas. So we have pepper. We also have other spices such as cardamom. We have arecanut, betel nut, also popularly known as betel nut around the world. Um, we have these as intercrops in our coffee plantations, and the harvesting does not interfere with the coffee harvest, and the the pollination of our coffee flowers happen with the help of honeybees, and it's an artificially pollinated flower. So we need honeybees in our coffee plantation. So we are very careful about not using any kind of chemicals, pesticides, insecticides to disturb the honeybee population. And you can distinctly tell in the flavor of our coffee that the spices come in because of the honeybee activity. We have our pepper and cardamom and all of these spices show in the flavor of the coffee if you cup the coffee in southern India. All right, you have seen the coffee flowering, you have seen the coffee ripen, you've seen the coffee harvesting, and you've seen the coffee roasting. Let's look at the next slide, which is how you make a perfect cup of filter coffee. Um, According to me, the best way to have coffee is not an Americano, it's our South Indian filter coffee. I honestly believe that. I think it's has a completely different flavor to the coffee. Unlike in cafes around the world, Indian homes do not typically buy coffee beans. We buy powdered coffee that is ready to use and mix our coffee with milk, which is famously known as Mysore filter coffee or Indian filter coffee. Um, Unless you go to a coffee plantation, you will not see people buying coffee beans and using them like is done in America. You will not find supermarkets selling roasted coffee beans. People typically buy powdered coffee, and then um, people in India like their coffee with milk, which is also known as cappuccino, but our filter coffee is quite different from the cappuccinos. It does not have as big as a froth or the head, like a cappuccino. I'll talk more about the South Indian filter coffee as we go through this video. Here you'll see my mother making a perfect South Indian filter coffee. What she has in her, what you're seeing down there is the also known as Mysore filter or the Indian filter. It's a percolator or a filter, however you'd like to call it. Um, and you could see that she's. Let's pause this, Anand, for a second. I'll just explain what's happening here. So what happens is we prepare what we call as coffee decoction or the concentrate. We fill in about 3 spoons of coffee into that filter and boil water, and then pour the boiled water onto the percolator or the filter for it to drip down. For the coffee to percolate and drip down, it might take about 15 to 20 minutes for it to completely trickle down onto the bottom portion of the filter. And that coffee concentrate is eventually used to mix with the filter coffee or with the milk. Let's proceed. So there you see it. What she's doing is using 2/3 portion of milk. What goes into a cup, 2/3 portion of that is milk. You add sugar to your liking, and that what you're seeing is her pouring the coffee concentrate or the decoction into the cup in her left hand. So you had 1/3 of the coffee concentrate into the cup. And what is really key is you never boil the concentrate. You're not supposed to boil the coffee decoction. That's burning the coffee. So you ensure that you have your decoction, the concentrate in the cup, and you boil the milk. And once the milk is boiling, then you pour the milk onto the cup. There you go. So you can see it's not as thick of a froth as it's in a cappuccino, but that's your perfect South Indian filter coffee. All right. You saw that, and I think I've pretty much gone through the process, right, from the coffee life cycle all the way to your cup. Any questions that you may have, I'll start taking them. I'm seeing some questions come in, so I'll jump right into that. If there's anything else, Jose, please forward them on to me.
Perfect. Sachin, thank you so much for showing us your farm, for sharing us how you grow coffee and how your family serves coffee. So that's very interesting. I personally don't drink coffee, but now I want a cup of coffee. So we'll start with a few questions. And the first one is, which is India's favorite hot beverage? Tea or coffee? We know India is the largest producer of tea in the world, but in your opinion, which one is India's favorite?
North India predominantly drinks tea. So the one-word answer is tea. Tea is still the most popular drink in India. North India does not know coffee in the sense they majorly drink tea because, again, closest to access to good coffees. And I think a lot of the educating process is still happening in India. And I think over the years, the trend is changing. Coffees and cafes are doing the job of educating how to make coffee, how to use coffee, how to make decoction and the concentrate, and so on. So I think the trend is catching on. What we're seeing around the world is the third wave of coffee. Everybody bringing their own roasters, using their own grinders. And I think the coffee trend is still catching up in India, and I think it'll change. But yes, as of today, tea is still the most popular beverage.
Perfect. Thank you, Sachin. So next questions. What are the most popular coffee brands in India?
So there are, when you say coffee brands, there are two ways to look at this. Cafes, when you look at cafes like Starbucks, you have Starbucks in the US, you have, I'm forgetting the Canadian chain, um, Wendy's? No, there's another one. Never mind. So we have our version of that. So Coffee Day is the most popular cafe chain in India. Starbucks came in a bit late. They have tied up with the Tatas. The same Tatas, you guys might have heard Tata from Ford Motor Company. Tata's acquired Jaguar Land Rover from Ford Motor Company. The same Tatas have their coffee plantations and they have partnered with Starbucks. But Starbucks is still catering to a very niche segment. They're catering to the higher economic ladder. Starbucks coffee may cost in India somewhere between $7 to $8 or thereabouts, whereas the Coffee Day is catering to $2 to $4 range of coffees. So I think the popular coffee chain is still Cafe Coffee Day. And when it comes to instant coffee, brew, and there is Kotas, which are local brands. Nescafe is out there, which is an international brand, but I think still Brew is the most popular one.
Thank you, Sachin. So we have received several questions from students. So I'll try to be selective. So the next one is about your favorite thing about being part of the coffee industry. You told us that you came to the US to study, you got your master's degree here, and then you went back to India to work in your family business. So what has been your favorite thing about that, going back?
Quite a few things, but I think what is really unbeatable is to wake up in our coffee plantation and go for that walk in the morning. I think hard to beat that. We are part of the Western Ghats, which is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It's just splendid. It's beautiful. And to live here every single day as part of the Western Ghats, enjoy the nature that we have around here, and live in the greenery that we have, and work with our 150 workers who are part of this setup every single day. Employing these guys, seeing them grow with us, all of this has been wonderful. I think these are challenging times in the sense that coffee is going through a very difficult phase, especially due to the pandemic. Like I was mentioning earlier, washed coffees predominantly gets exported to Europe, and since the cafes have been shut down due to the pandemic since March 2020, absolutely no consumption of washed coffees is happening right now. So difficult, challenging times. Our coffee prices have dropped 30–40%, especially the washed coffee. But we have been fortunate to have our own retailing shelves, our own local dealers, and so on, where we've been able to market our coffee and go through this. But during the pandemic, the unemployment rates around the world shot up, and so it did in South India too. And the beauty of employing these guys and giving them a livelihood, seeing their happiness, employing them through the pandemic, not firing a single person, there's a different level of satisfaction to all of that. And I think I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Perfect. Thank you, Sachin. So since you mentioned that that's one of your favorite things to enjoy your workers, interact with them, tell us about their working conditions within the coffee plantations in India. And I'll have a follow-up question with that. What are the working conditions within coffee plantations in India?
Can you explain that a little more? When you say working conditions, what exactly are you referring to?
I believe, well, regarding the how they live, do they live within the farm?
Yeah.
Do they commute from their homes for their other rural areas? So how is that interaction?
Okay. So we do have our own labor quarters, worker quarters, where we have about 30% of our workforce staying on the property. So we have all the facilities that they need, dispensaries. We also have a creche to take care of their kids while the parents are at work. We have our schools close by where the workers' kids go to. And we have all the facilities for the workers who are on the property, but we also have walk-ins, which means we have about 70% of our workers coming in from neighboring villages, where it takes about 10 minutes for them to come to our plot by walk. So it's a small village. We have our panchayat schooling system, everything set up here. So let's talk a little bit more about the working conditions. So one of the things that I was talking about earlier is our Indian coffee is solely dependent on labor force, because majority of it is not done mechanically. We depend on our workers for almost every part of the process. Irrigating is done through our workers, harvesting, sorting, pruning the plants, all of this is done with our workers. When my great granddad, going back to the history, when he started the plantation, our labor expense was somewhere between 5 to 10%. And India being a developing country, it's changing fast. Now it's gone up to 70%. Our majority of our expenses are employee compensation, or our wages and labor expense. So we do take care of our workers in the best possible way, because we can't do anything here without them. And there is a severe shortage of laborers because of the current situation. Due to pandemic, we have migrant laborers coming from North India for the harvest season, but due to pandemic, that's not happening. So it's something that we pay special attention to. And India being a developing country, the facilities for the working class has been improving over the years, which is fantastic. There is government initiatives to help them in many of the, giving ration or grains and so on. So the lifestyle has been going up over the years, and we are seeing the benefit out of that.
Perfect. Thank you, Sachin. That's impressive to know how much it has changed from generation to generation. Now it's up to 70%. That's great to hear. Another question related to the production in your farm. Approximately, what is the annual production of your coffee plantation? And of that, do you export any? And then a follow-up question is, can we find your coffee here in the US?
Okay, so our production goes up to 2,500 bags of washed coffee, bags of 50 kilos of washed coffee, and about 1,000 bags of cherries, which is unwashed coffee. And we do export our coffee. We have been exporting to Illy in Italy. I don't know if it's a popular brand, if you've heard of it. It's ILLY. Illy has consumed our coffee, or we export it to them. Unfortunately, we have not been going to the United States, simply because the washed coffees are not popular there. I think US caters to the cherries, and we have not had a chance to partner with somebody who wants this washed coffee out there. So maybe sometime in the future we are looking to find a good partner. So if we're lucky, or if they're lucky to have our coffee, we may find someone. I forgot the second part of the question, Jose.
Regarding if how much you export, and then how much if you sell into the US. So it was you already answered.
About 20% of our coffee is retailed locally, and about 30% of the remaining coffee is exported, and 50% goes into the bulk market through the auctions and to the local dealers. So that's a segmentation that we have.
Perfect, thank you. Now, a question related to sustainability. We have a lot of students interested in sustainability. Do you implement any sustainability or regenerative agriculture practices in your coffee plantation?
Absolutely. I think that's the order of the day. We have to strive hard to make everything sustainable. So what we do today is, you saw the coffee pulping process. The skin that's separated out of the coffee is stored in what we call as compost pits, which is applied back to our estate. There's a composting process, which is a 6-month process, where we add several. We have our own laboratory in our plantation where we manufacture microorganisms, or we develop microorganisms which are beneficial for our soil, and we mix them with our coffee husk and we apply it back. And we're trying to reduce our reliance on chemical fertilizers such as urea, potash, and phosphoric fertilizers, simply because that's not a sustainable model, and the cost of these products are going up every single year. We try to reuse every single thing that comes into our plantation. We try not to bring in anything from outside, but we have not achieved that yet. We are still relying to a certain extent on other fertilizers, but we have our own dairy in our plantation as well. So the cow dung and the cow manure, we have our poultry manure, everything that comes out of it is applied back into our plantation. We try not to we are absolutely not using any insecticides, pesticides. Like I said, we are very sensitive to our bee population. We don't want to do anything to harm them. So we are using many of these bioagents. Even India is going big on bioagents. They're educating the smaller farmers to start using this, and we are seeing this help the soil condition, and we're doing more and more of this. We have vermicompost, which is applied throughout the plantation. We're doing many of these things and trying to rely more on these practices than going for commercial products.
That's great to hear, Sachin. Thank you. And a follow-up question to sustainability practices. Are there any agencies in India certifying coffee production in relation to sustainability practices?
Yes, there are. I'm unable to get their name right now. There are quite a few agencies that are doing it, and we're in the process of getting our certification too. We're working with a couple of agencies, but the certification agencies, there is government agencies and there are private agencies that do that. They're available, but my memory fails me right now. I'm not able to think of the names.
No, that's perfectly fine. And is that process, certification process, extensive and costly, or in other countries it takes a lot of time to get those certifications? I'm imagining in India is the same case.
Yes, I've been working on it for 2.5 years. I'm guessing it'll take me another year or so. It's a time-consuming one.
Well, perfect, Anand. We are running out of time, but I just wanted to express my appreciation for taking the time to talk with us today. It's been great to learn about coffee traditions, coffee heritage in India, and we hope you can visit us soon. You have been to different places in the US. You need to stop by Oklahoma and visit our university. So thank you so much for your time, Sachin.